G'day friends, it's Andrew here from Nature's Image Photography with a quick video on customizing the quick menu on the Panasonic Lumix S1. I continue to be impressed by the level of customization available on these Lumix cameras, and in a moment I'll explain why I decided to make this one of the first changes I made when I got my hands on the S1. Before we start, if you're finding my channel for the first time, I'll invite you to subscribe. I'm a big fan of Lumix cameras and there's plenty more good stuff on the way. So this video is a big detour from my original plan. I had only just received the camera on loan from Panasonic Australia and I thought the best way to get to know it was to launch into a project. I was getting ready to make a video about shooting time-lapse on the Lumix S1. I've already made a similar video on the G9 and I thought, how different could it be? So I was launching into confidently showing how to make the necessary changes in the quick menu when right about here, you can actually see the moment when I realised this wasn't the quick menu I was expecting. Luckily, I've switched the sound off, or you would also be able to hear the gears in my brain grinding to a halt. So here's the problem. That quick menu doesn't contain most of the items I expected to find, and it does include a whole bunch of functions that I don't need and I don't want. I doubt this was the default menu. I suspect someone else had already customized it before the camera was sent to me. But for a day or so I thought I was stuck with it. Then I discovered this item in the main menu that changed everything. It turns out you can totally redesign the quick menu to suit your preference, from the contents to the layout and even the navigation. And it all starts here in the third part of the menu, where you scroll down to Operations 1 and look for the heading Q Menu Settings. The first item on the list is Layout Style, so we'll start there. If you select Mode 1, your quick menu looks like this, with a preview image and all your items in a panel on the right. If you select Mode 2, you remove the preview image, your menu items appear across the top, with a larger panel below where you scroll through the selections for each item. I find I prefer the simpler layout of Mode 2, but this is purely a matter of personal preference, so I'm not going to recommend one over the other. Next, we'll look at selecting which items you want to appear in your quick menu, and we'll start by going back to the same part of the menu, but this time go down to Item Customize. Now you have 12 positions, and when you select any one of them, you're presented with an almost overwhelming range of options that can be assigned to that spot. Honestly, there are so many options and I don't even know what some of them do. So let's go back and I'll show you how I changed that item 6 from constant preview to metering mode. So after identifying the item I want to change, I go to Q Menu Settings, then down to Item Customize, and I select that position 6. Then I go looking through that list, and the one I'm looking for is in the first section called Image Quality 1. I go down to the Metering Mode heading and click Set. Now when I go back to my quick menu, metering is now saved to position 6, so I can now select that along with any of the other functions you see there on the screen. So that's how I select my quick menu for still photography, and as you have probably already spotted, there's also another section where you can select a different quick menu for use with your creative video work. Naturally, both menus have some functions in common, but there are plenty of items here that are very specific to video. I haven't really done any video shooting on the S1, so that Q menu is the same today as when it arrived. Now there's one final item we haven't looked at yet, and that's the front dial assignment. That gives you an extra option on how you navigate the Q menu. So we go down to the front dial assignment heading and you can choose between item and value. If you choose value and go back to your quick menu, you'll see that for whichever item you've selected, turning the front control dial on the camera scrolls through the different values for that item. The back control dial does the same, so you can change the value using your finger or your thumb, whichever feels most comfortable for you. On the other hand, if you go back to front dial assignment in the menu and this time select item, now each dial will have a different function. You can see here the front control dial scrolls through the different items on the Q menu, and the back dial lets you select the value within each item. To me, this is by far the better of the two options, so it's the one I'm sticking with. By the way, take a good look at this Q menu. Have you noticed that one of the items is greyed out? It's the exposure compensation function, and in fact it's been greyed out for most of the clips in this video. This is the last thing I want to cover, and I'm just mentioning it for anyone who gets bamboozled if this happens to them. You can clearly see exposure compensation is selected as one of my 12 functions, but when I go to the Q menu I can't access it. This is simply because most of the time I'm shooting in fully manual mode, so I set my aperture, shutter speed and ISO myself. The exposure compensation function is greyed out because it doesn't apply for that style of shooting. But if I turn my exposure mode dial to AV, aka aperture priority, now exposure compensation is back in play, so the item becomes available in the Q menu. So to make a long story short, if the function won't work with the settings you're using, then it's not selectable. And that's it for my quick look at the quick menu. If you're just getting to know your Lumix full frame camera, I hope you find this helpful. For the record, I'm still working on that time-lapse video I mentioned at the start, so don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you really learned something useful, you can always thank me with a coffee. I'll put a link in the info below. I'm Andrew Goodall, this is Nature's Image Photography. Thanks for watching.